Our discussion is never complete until Bret Baier joins us, who you know is the anchor of Special Report on Fox News Channel. And Bret, I understand you got a special tonight on Egypt after your regular show?
We do. Good morning. 9 p.m. Eastern Time. We have an hour special on Egypt. We'll have live updates as well as analysis from an expert panel. And then we have some long-form pieces that really put things in perspective in the big picture. It should be an interesting hour, and we're hoping in that hour also to talk to Greg Palcott, our correspondent.
Oh, yeah.
Who was,
how's he doing?
Brutally beaten, in the square in Cairo.
Let me ask you something about the situation is changing. A couple of names have surfaced this morning, and I want to find out how much you know about them. But one is a gentleman named Sami Anan, who's the chief of the Egyptian Armed Forces. The other is Field Marshal Mohammed Tantawi, who is the defense minister and apparently has been in Tahrir Square this morning. Do you know whether these guys are the real power brokers in forming what this new transition government in Egypt may look like?
Yeah, that's what we're hearing behind the scenes, and they have been in contact with the Pentagon, Defense Secretary Gates, as well as Admiral Mullen. That communication line is much more fluid and open than the head of government. Obviously, the president has talked to President Mubarak twice, and Vice President Biden called Vice President Suleiman yesterday. But we're hearing the Army is going to be crucial to whatever transition happens, and that the administration is pushing for Mubarak to step down now and have some sort of transition with the Army helping perhaps Suleiman take over and Mubarak leave now.
All right, what about the Muslim Brotherhood in all of this? They're reporting this morning that we've talked about quite some time that maybe the administration is going to bring the Muslim Brotherhood into the table, at least to talk about some things. What are you hearing on that front?
Yeah, I haven't heard that. I mean, I've heard the reporting on that, but I haven't heard it from our sources. The concern, as we hear it, is that the Muslim Brotherhood would fill the vacuum after whatever transition happened if it was not accepted by the Egyptian people. In other words, it would be a three-act play. One would be, the democracy push, the protesters, Mubarak leaves, the new government perhaps doesn't succeed, and then the Muslim Brotherhood would fill in.
Right.
And that's the concern.
Bret, along that note, a 2010 Pew Research poll revealed the following about Egyptians' views. 95% believe Islam should play a large role in politics. 49% Islam only plays a small role in Egypt today. 84% believe apostates from Islam should face the death penalty. 82% believe adulterers should be stoned. 77% believe thieves should be flogged or have their hands cut off. 54% believe men and women should be segregated in the workplace. This is a Pew Research poll in 2010 about Egyptians' views. My feeling is the Brotherhood is moving in, and my feeling is that anything before that, all of this dancing around, we're going to put somebody in and try to make nice, that's like the Mideast peace talks that we've been having for years. And it was, it's going to be great, we're having the talks, it's all going to go great. It's not going to go great. The Muslim Brotherhood is moving in. That's my opinion. How are you going to examine the Brotherhood at all?
We are.
Are you going to examine them as to
segment on it and a panel analysis?
And how about how they're working here in the United States? Are you going to examine organizations like CARE and ISNA? And the Muslim Students Association, because they're controlled by the Muslim Brotherhood.
It extends a lot of places, and I think the situation, well, first of all, the special is going to focus on the situation in Egypt and throughout the region, and what we're seeing in the contagion of protests that are going in other countries.
Right.
There's a lot to examine, though. You're right, Mrs. Fred. And I think people don't fully get their head around how big a deal it is. I will tell you that, when you hear Mubarak tell ABC, you don't understand the Egyptian culture and what would happen if I step down now.
That's right, he's right.
It's going to be total chaos.
Yeah.
It's a tough thing.
Well, they don't have our Western values. They just, that's not the way they think. So we can't expect them to... So the
question is, does this dictator for 30 years... and he has clearly done a lot of bad things to his people, and he's not exactly a beacon of democracy.
No, but he has kept them from Sharia law, which is in their constitution.
But the other thing here, and talking about elections, this is one of the things I wanted you to comment on. Is I keep wondering about the timing here, Brett. All of a sudden, the administration is now saying this has to happen very quickly.
Why?
It was the same strategy that we had in Gaza, and Hamas got elected, whereas perhaps if we'd waited a little longer and created a unit that obviously was not as discredited as Fatah, but obviously not as politically powerful as Hamas, we might not be looking at the Islamic government that now rules that part of the Middle East.
No, I think you're exactly right. The problem in Egypt and the problem in Gaza was that there wasn't a moderate alternative. There wasn't an opposition party because in Egypt, Mubarak for years prevented an opposition party from rising up in his country. So there isn't another secular alternative. And so when you push for elections, what are you going to get? You're going to get perhaps some of that polling data that Mrs. Fred mentioned.
That's what you're going to get because that's what people want there.
Well, we're led to believe. I'm not sure I trust those polls, but I do trust the organizational power of the Muslim Brotherhood. They've been around since 1928, and if the elections were held in a couple of months, they'd obviously be the best organized, would they not?
One would think. One would think.
And they started out right there in Egypt.
But it all comes down to
the question is, I mean, we obviously can't install someone.
Right.
Exactly.
You can't, whatever the U.S. says, the Egyptians largely will turn their back on. I mean, that's one of the things the administration is dealing with, is that if they say they're for something and it gets on the street, it may
backfire
possibly be exactly the opposite of that.
Right. It said the key here is the military, and the question is how sure are we that the military is going to side with what we hope will happen, and that we have a strong presence from the military that is pro-U.S.?
Yeah. Now that is the biggest question, and I think those conversations that are happening between the Pentagon at the highest levels and the Egyptian military, remember that the relationship is very tight. Every 2 years, this is Operation Bright Star, this big, massive military-to-military engagement. I've been there. The relationship with the Egyptian military is very tight.
And there's also, what, $1.3 billion on the table in terms of the money that actually goes to the Egyptian military?
$1.3 billion every year.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a lot of money, and we have given them a lot of equipment and a lot of training over the years.
So are we going to be giving that money to the Muslim Brotherhood, I wonder?
I mean,
don't laugh.
The question is,
don't laugh.
What do you do? Senator Leahy has already said on Capitol Hill that he is going to hold committee hearings to pull back, to call for aid to Egypt to be stopped unless there's unrest or whatever.
That would play right into the Brotherhood's hands.
All right, Brett, heavy stuff. We'll be watching tonight, and the specials at 9 o'clock as well.
9 Eastern.
Right.
Thanks,
Thank
Brett.
you, Brett, as always. Brett Baier.